It's not every day you wake up, shuffle outside with a steaming mug of coffee, and find your quiet ranch transformed into a chaotic parking lot. That's exactly what happened to me one crisp October morning in 2025 when I stepped onto my porch, still in my faded plaid pajama pants, and froze mid-sip. There, sprawled across my pasture like a plague of locusts with better financing, were 32 gleaming SUVs, their tires carving deep ruts into the dew-soaked earth. My land, my sanctuary, had become a staging ground for some suburban invasion I hadn't signed up for. Beside me, my old hound Rusty let out a guttural growl, his graying muzzle twitching as if he could smell the entitlement wafting off the intruders. I didn't need to ask what he was thinking. His low rumble mirrored the storm brewing in my chest. As I stood there, barefoot and incredulous, watching a man in a polo shirt unload a portable grill next to my horse trough, I muttered under my breath, "Lydia's about to learn why you don't mess with a rancher's dirt." This whole mess started 3 weeks earlier when I got a knock on my door, or rather, a honk. 2 sharp blasts from a horn, followed by the crunch of gravel as Lydia Bennett, self-appointed empress of the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association, stepped out of her silver Audi like she was gracing me with her presence. I live just beyond the manicured edges of their cul-de-sac kingdom, where they wield weed whackers like scepters and fine you for leaving a kayak on your lawn. My ranch isn't part of their HO and never has been, never will be, but that's never stopped Lydia. She's the kind of woman who'd ticket a cloud for raining too loud. That day, she marched up my driveway, clipboard in hand, and suggested I donate a slice of my pasture for their overflow parking. "It's just sitting there," she'd said, waving a manicured hand to my rolling fields like they were an affront to her sense of order. I told her no, plain and simple. My land's mine, and I don't owe her or her khaki-clad minions a damn thing. She'd pursed her lips, scribbled something on her clipboard, and left with a "we'll see about that" tossed over her shoulder. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. Lydia doesn't take rejection like a normal person. She turns it into a crusade. Turns out she'd been planning some grand HOA shindig, a fall fest and fundraiser with a petting zoo, a bounce house, and a silent auction to fund more streetlights no one asked for. Problem was their pristine little streets couldn't handle the parking. Instead of renting a lot or, God forbid, scaling back, Lydia decided my pasture was her personal solution. She didn't ask again. She just told her flock of yoga moms and golf dads to roll their gas guzzlers onto my property like it was a public thoroughfare. So that morning, as the sun crept over the hills, I stood there watching her orchestrate the takeover. She wore a sash that glittered "Community Champion" in tacky cursive and barked orders into a walkie-talkie like she was commanding a SWAT team. A woman in leggings staked citronella torches into my alfalfa patch. A guy in flip-flops set up a cotton candy machine right over my irrigation line, the pink sugar dripping into the mud. And there, smack in the middle of my hayfield, a teenager in a backward cap was assembling a sound system, bass thumping so hard it rattled my barn windows. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the heat steady my nerves, and started down the hill. My boots crunched against the gravel path as I approached Lydia, who turned to me with a smile so smug it could have curdled milk. "Morning, Jake," she chirped like we were old pals. "Isn't this wonderful? We're uniting the community. Don't worry, we'll tidy up after." I didn't say anything at first, just stared at her, then at the black Range Rover she'd parked halfway on my water valve, its rear tire sinking into the soft earth. Finally, I spoke, low and deliberate. "You invited your whole circus onto my land without asking." She flicked her wrist like she was shooing a gnat. "Oh, come on, you've got all this space doing nothing. It's just one day." That's when I grinned, not a friendly grin, but the kind that promises trouble. "Well," I said, stepping back, "since you've made yourselves at home, I reckon my dogs ought to greet their guests." Lydia blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" But I was already heading for the kennel, coffee still in hand. Let me tell you about my dogs. Rusty's a bloodhound, grizzled and grumpy, with a bark that could wake the dead and a nose that doesn't miss a thing. Pepper's a border collie mix, all wiry energy and sharp eyes, who herds anything that moves strangers chickens, even a wind if it's blowing too hard. Then there's Titan, a massive Great Dane who thinks he's a puppy, all lumbering paws and drooling affection until he decides you're a threat. I swung the kennel gate open, and they didn't charge, they strutted, like they owned the place, which in their minds they did. Rusty led the pack, sniffing the air with disdain. Pepper darted forward, ears perked, tail slicing the breeze. Titan brought up the rear, his shadow stretching long across the grass. The chaos didn't erupt all at one seat, unfurled like a slow-motion train wreck. Someone shrieked as Rusty nosed a tray of sliders off a picnic table, gobbling one before it hit the ground. Pepper zipped through the crowd, scattering a game of cornhole and sending wooden blocks flying into a kiddie pool. Titan, bless him, spotted a woman in a sundress holding a plate of brownies and made a beeline, knocking her flat as he snuffled her dessert into oblivion. Within minutes, the HOA's polished event was a screaming mess of toppled chairs, spilled lemonade, and one guy climbing onto his Jeep yelling about wild beasts. Lydia came storming over, face redder than a barn in a sunset. "You can't just unleash them like this," she screeched. I shrugged, sipping my coffee. "My land, Lydia. No leash laws here." She opened her mouth to argue, but Rusty let out a booming bark that made her flinch. She stumbled back, muttering about lawyers and fines, as Titan flopped down beside her and started licking her designer sneakers. Sheriff Tom rolled up 20 minutes later, his cruiser kicking up dust as he surveyed the wreckage. He stepped out, thermos in hand, and grinned at me. "Your dog's hosting another rager, Jake?" I smirked. "Seems the HOA forgot to RSVP. Lydia rushed over, demanding arrests and citations, but Tom just held up a hand. "Ma'am, you're trespassing on private property. His dogs are free to roam here. Maybe pick a different spot next time." She sputtered, mascara streaking as she waved her walkie-talkie like a gavel. Titan chose that moment to lumber over and plop down on her foot, pinning her in place. I tipped my mug at her. "Welcome to the ranch." The dogs loved it. The next morning, Rusty sat by the gate, staring at the pasture like he expected the buffet to return. Pepper patrolled the fence line with extra swagger, sniffing for stray hot dogs. Titan sprawled across the porch steps, snoring with a paw over his face like he'd partied too hard. The tire tracks and trampled grass were a reminder of the invasion, but I wasn't mad. Hell, I was proud. My crew had cleared the field in record time, sending the HOA scurrying back to their cul-de-sacs with picnic baskets abandoned mid-flight. One woman had perched on her SUV's hood until Pepper lost interest. Another guy tripped over a sprinkler and face-planted in horse manure, priceless. But Lydia wasn't done. She doesn't lose gracefully. She stews, plots, and comes back swinging. 2 days later, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by a nervous teen on a bike. It was from the HOA, accusing me of hosting unsanctioned livestock disturbances and threatening fines. I let Rusty pee on it. Then came the flyers tacked to every mailbox in Pinewood Estates claiming my dogs were a public menace. One had a grainy photo of Titan mid-sneeze, captioned "Known Aggressor." Another showed Pepper sniffing a kid's sandal, labeled "Rabid Threat." I framed them for laughs. Animal control showed up next. A lanky guy named Pete who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Got a complaint about vicious dogs," he sighed. I invited him in. Rusty ignored him, Pepper wagged her tail, and Titan rolled over for belly rubs. Pete left with a grin, a selfie with Titan, and a note to file the report as unfounded. "Might want to put up a sign, though," he said. "Rile her up more." I did big, bold letters. "Beware, dogs smell bullshit." Lydia escalated. A drone buzzed my property one morning, dipping low over the barn until Pepper nearly snagged it. It had an HOA sticker subtle as a brick. Then a county inspector showed up, mumbling about barn code violations. I showed him around, Titan drooling on his clipboard, and he left praising my solar-powered shed. The next HOA packet was a masterpiece of delusion claiming my hay bales disrupted their visual harmony and demanding a hearing to assess my ranch's threat to property values. That's when I got serious. I dug into records, found Lydia's half-built fence was on utility land, and tipped off the county. They slapped her with a violation notice while she yelled at them in a bathrobe. Then I mailed the HOA board stills from my trail cams Lydia, sneaking onto my land at midnight, tripping in a chicken feed, and fleeing from my rooster, Hank. No, just the photos. Whispers spread. Lydia's jog stopped. The board started cracking. The final showdown came at an emergency HOA meeting. Lydia stood at a podium, armed with slides of Rusty barking and Titan lounging, calling me a rural terrorist. She proposed seizing my land for community use. I stood, handed the board proof I'd bought their clubhouse lot out from under them legally, quietly, 2 months back, and watched her implode. If you want an used space, I said, start with this building. The room exploded laughter, gasps, a get wrecked from the back. Lydia yanked the projector cord, screaming about fakes, but the board voted her out in seconds. She stormed off, toppling a fern, and I handed out popcorn. A week later, I threw a ranch party open invite. No HOA allowed. Tables groaned with brisket. A band played under the oaks, and the dogs wore bandanas. Titan danced with kids. Pepper herded fireflies, and Rusty guarded the grill. Lydia was gone. The HOA humbled, and my land stood firm. As the stars winked on, I cracked a root beer and toasted the quiet victory of dogs, dirt, and a ranch that answers to no one. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.